We are going to learn the rules of debit and credit under the modern approach. In the modern approach, we can categorize the items of transactions into 5 categories. The first one is assets, the second is liability, third is capital, fourth one is revenue, and the fifth one is the expenses. So all the items in a transaction may be categorized in any of the 5 categories. So what is the rule of the assets? The first item, if there is an increase in the asset in the transaction, then you have to debit that item. If there is a decrease in the item of the asset, you will have to credit that item. For example, if you are going to purchase the plant, so purchasing the plant will increase your plant. Plant is an asset, so the plant will be debited. If you sell the plant, so plant will go out, it will decrease the plant. So plant will be credited in case of sale. It will be debited when you purchase, it will be credited when you sell, because on purchase it will increase, on sale it will decrease. So on purchase, if it is increasing, you have to debit that. On sale, if it is decreasing, you will have to credit that. The other examples of the assets may be cash, furniture, building, land, equipment. There can be some intangible assets as well, like goodwill, patent, trademark, etc. So these are the items of assets. So if you find these items, you will apply this rule. Next is the liability. In case of liability, if there is an increase in liability, it will be credited, and if there is a decrease in liability, it will be debited. Liability is the obligations of the business. You will have to pay the amount in future. So the examples of the liabilities are the borrowings and the loan that you have taken from the bank or any other institutions. The liability is another example of liability is the amount which is due but not paid, like all the outstanding expenses with either it be wages outstanding, salaries outstanding, rent outstanding. These are all the examples of the liabilities. One more example of the liability is unearned revenue, the revenue which is not earned, the amount which you have received but you have not delivered the goods, or you have not performed the services. So until you perform the service and deliver the goods, you will have the liability. So unearned revenue is also an example of the liability. And the other example of the liability is the creditors. If you have purchased the goods or machinery or any other assets on credit, so that person will be your creditor, and this is also your liability. So if the liability is increasing, it is credited. If the liability is decreasing, it will be debited. For example, if you have goods purchased from Mr. Kareem, so Kareem is your creditor. So Kareem, the creditor, is increasing if you are making the purchases from him. So Kareem is the creditor and it is increasing your liability. Therefore, Kareem will be credited in case of the credit purchases. Similarly, if you are making the payment to Kareem later on, so now your liability will decrease due to the payment. So suppose you have purchased the goods from Kareem for 1 month's credit. So after 1 month, when you make the payment to Kareem, your creditor will decrease and therefore your liability will decrease. So you will apply the rule of liability, and in that case, after 1 month, when you make the payment to Kareem, Kareem will be debited, because Kareem's liability, your liability that was to pay to Kareem is decreasing. Next is the capital. Capital is the amount invested by the owner into the business. If you invest into the business, your capital will increase. At that time, you will credit it. Okay. If you withdraw the capital from the business, so your capital will decrease, and that's why in that case you will have to debit that. So increasing the capital will be credited and decreasing the capital will be debited. Increasing the capital will be credited and decreasing the capital will be debited. The next is revenue. Increase in revenue is credited, decrease in revenue is debited. Revenue, the examples of the revenues, the most important example of the revenue is your service revenue, your actual operations of the business, providing the services and delivering the goods or selling the goods. Sales is also an example of the revenue. The other type of the revenue that you can have is the commission received, discount received, rent received, etc. So whatever revenue you get, that is credited if it is increasing. If it is decreasing, that will be credited. So generally the revenue increases, so we find it to the credit side. For example, commission received. So commission is a revenue and your revenue is increasing, therefore commission will be credited. Interest received. So interest is the revenue because of the receiving, and therefore interest will be credited. The last one is expenses. If there is any expense and the expense increases, it will be debited. If the expense decreases, it will be credited. For example, salaries paid. Salaries is an expense and your expense is increasing because of the payment, so salary will be debited. Either you have make the payment of salary or not make the you have not made the payment of salary, it is an expense. If the expense belong to the particular period, that is your expense as per the accrual basis of accounting. There are two bases, cash basis and accrual basis. That's another topic of discussion. You can see the other videos. So in the accrual basis of accounting, whether you have make the payment of salary and wages and all your expenses, but that expense belong to the current period, so that is your expense. It means your expense is increasing. So your liability, your expense is increasing because of these expenses. So salaries paid, wages paid, commission paid, discount allowed, these are all the expenses, and therefore these will be debited as per the rule. Hope you would have understood these 5 categories of the modern approach of the rules of debit and credit. We can see the examples of the transactions and how these rules are applied in these transactions to frame the journal entries. If you have liked this video, please hit the like button. Thank you so much.